So the best thing I can say, when you're starving, you're ravenous, you want everything in the world, and you have this low blood sugar, go nab your low snack, say, hey, I'm taking my 12 grams, I'm taking my 20 grams. Most lows, you don't need more than 20. And I will say that straight up, unless you have been hyperactive outside or you've had, 4 hours of activity or something crazy. If it's a normal day, more often than not, you probably don't need more than 20 grams, but take your protein and your carbs. I said protein on purpose because protein, you're gonna need a little bit to stabilize, especially if you're concerned with a lot of activity. But take your carbs, move away from the food source. So if you're in the kitchen, get out of the kitchen.
Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode.
What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And today, I want to go over some questions from social media. Sometimes I get comments, sometimes I get messages. And I feel like a lot of times these questions are actually useful for everybody to hear about and to expand upon, go into more detail, and hopefully give you a nugget or two that you can take away and say, hey, I'm going to apply this to my life moving forward as a person living with diabetes and as a person who wants to thrive. So I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 7 solid questions here. A few of them were recurring themes that kept coming up, so I wanted to make sure I addressed them. And some of them were very specific to certain situations, but either way, it covers a wide breadth of things. And I think all of them have importance in your life. And they might be little things, right? We're all about, on this podcast and on my social media channels, we're all about how can we deliver in those little nuanced things that people don't talk about often, because it has to happen, right? So first things first, when you have a low blood sugar, how do you pace yourself? And this is such a great question, right? Because when you have a low blood sugar, especially if you're in the 50s or the 40s, if you're in the 60s, it depends on the person, right? But when you're in the 50s and the 40s, you want to eat everything in sight. I don't know about you. My record ever was in college. I had, was it 2,100, 2,000 calories in 10 minutes? Regardless, that's a ton of food. Like, I just went nuts. Obviously, it did not end well. But the thing is, you don't want those situations, because the last thing you want is, it feels really good in the moment. Oh, my blood sugar is 47. Oh, this is so delicious. I'm having Fruit Loops. I'm having these chocolate chips. I'm having this. And then you stop and you're like, it's like you're playing a game of musical chairs. The music stops and you're like, I just had how many carbs? I have no idea. Okay, now I'm estimating to hope that I don't spike up to 350 or 400. And that can be a really dangerous situation. So the best thing I can say, when you're in that situation, you're starving, you're ravenous, you want everything in the world, and you have this low blood sugar, go nab your low snack. Say, hey, I'm taking my 12 grams, I'm taking my 20 grams. Most lows, you don't need more than 20. And I will say that straight up, unless you have been hyperactive outside or you've had, 4 hours of activity or something crazy. If it's a normal day, more often than not, you probably don't need more than 20 grams, but take your protein and your carbs. I said protein on purpose because protein, you're gonna need a little bit to stabilize, especially if you're concerned with a lot of activity. But take your carbs, move away from the food source. So if you're in the kitchen, get out of the kitchen. If you're at a grocery store, get out of the grocery store, whatever it is, get away from the food source and then wait it out for 20 to 25 minutes. And that will be a painful 20 to 25 minutes. You might need to watch a show. You might need to scroll on social media. You might need to do something, distract yourself, talk to someone, whatever you got to do to not keep going. Because the worst thing you can do is continue to eat, because then it will all catch up. It never just comes through your system. Like I said, unless you have an exception where you were active for an exceptionally long period of time, it will never just kind of be like, oh, cool, it just kind of sat there. Like, it might delay, but it will definitely hit you at some point. So remove yourself from the food, let it do its thing, and you will come up in the range and you'll feel a heck of a lot better. So I hope that helps on that question. One person, how do you control your blood sugars with gastroparesis? So this is a tough question. And so before anything else, I'll define gastroparesis basically as, it's a condition people get where their vagus nerve, there's the mind-body connection. Your stomach digests really slow. So we've talked about high-fat meals where you have a meal that takes forever to digest and your blood sugar can rise hours later. Now imagine, it doesn't matter what you eat. That's what's happening because your digestion is so slow. So what's happening most of the time is these people are not able to have very high-fat meals because take something that slowly digests and then make it exponential with a condition that makes you slowly digest, and your blood sugars are in for a real treat. But the reality is, when this happens, a lot of times you take your insulin, your food isn't digesting, your carbs don't digest. So you dip, you go low, and then you skyrocket when it all decides to digest. So a couple things. First thing is you're going to have to work with a dietitian. It can be our team. It can be anybody's team. You have to work with a dietitian specifically on this, because that can be a very nuanced thing where you're going to have to figure out what's going on with your body, what types of foods you're eating, when you need to dose, how much you need to dose, etc. Before anything else. I cannot emphasize that enough. It has to be with a dietitian. Second thing is, like I said before, don't go after the high fat meals. It's probably not going to help you a whole lot, but you're still going to need some protein. You're still going to need some carbs. A lot of times, smaller meals might be like, the 4 or 5 small meals a day type of approach may help you because it's less to digest. So, okay, it does its thing and you're on to the next. So that may help versus a gigantic meal. But the biggest thing I can emphasize for gastroparesis has to be having a game plan on dosing. Maybe you're an extended dose candidate if you're on an insulin pump, right? But having a game plan with your care team to know what to do for dosing so you're not constantly plummeting and then shooting up, because that's not going to help anybody. How do I combat dawn phenomenon? So this will be another one I will define first. Dawn phenomenon is where, 2, 3, 4, 5 a.m., your blood sugar skyrockets because of hormones, because your body releases growth hormone and epinephrine, norepinephrine, and other catecholamines and other lovely things because your body's trying to recover itself at that point. So it's fine, it's dandy, right? But it can raise your blood sugar a substantial amount. And I'm talking, for some people, it can be 100 points. Some people it might be 15 points or 20 points, but you don't want that happening. The biggest thing I can suggest is when you're on a pump with your care team, making sure that you have a game plan to address that. So making sure you say, hey, I've got an adjusted basal rate for that time frame. It is higher than the rest of the day, or it's higher than whatever it was before. So that way it can combat and anticipate that rise, so your number ideally stays flat. Now, on the flip side, you have the possibility of, well, I don't know what to do. I'm on MDI. You could just wake up and dose, and it would be really annoying, but you may have to consider doing that. Or again, working with your care team on what type of long acting you have. Some of them, like Lantus, have a little bit of a bump that could help you if you time it correctly. There's a bunch of different things you can consider, but you have to have that game plan with your care team to be able to accomplish this. Because again, you don't want us to be kind of flailing around. Oh, well, it's okay, it'll be fine. Like, overnight is a third of your day, right? If you assume it's 8 hours of sleep, roughly, even though we know it may be less, even if it's 6 hours, that's a quarter of your day. That's a huge chunk of your A1C that you're effectively letting just be higher because of the sake of, oh, it's too hard. Oh, is it? No, take the bull by the horn, say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. If you're on a pump, it's very easy. If you're not on a pump, again, there's ways to do it. I used to have nasty dawn phenomenon back in the day. I'm currently on MDI, and knock on all the wood. Yeah, I might go up a teeny little bit, but I'm not necessarily flying up because I've got the basal part of it knocked down. So there's ways to do it. Definitely be working hand in hand with your care team. And like I said before, if you don't have a care team, or your care team's not going in depth the way that I'm even going in this podcast, right? My team and I are here to help. We're all dietitians. We all have exercise backgrounds. We all have the knowledge of diabetes, and we're here to be able to support you. It's a message on social media at Man of Zeal, MANOFTZEEL. Oh, this next one's a doozy, but I love it. How long should I wait before I correct again? And this is such a good question, because the rage bolus philosophy is real, right? You have a high blood sugar, you're 206. You correct, you're 204. You're waiting, you're sitting there, 197, 202. You're like, why is my number not going down? I just want to correct again. And it's human instinct, right? You feel like trash. You don't want to be dealing with this nonsense. But what ends up happening, you end up shooting yourself in the foot because, oh, I'm going to correct again. Well, then finally the insulin from before kicks in, and now the new insulin kicks in, and your 204, 205, 202 turns into 102, 87, 62. And you're like, holy smokes, this should not have happened. And it's preventable. Raging never usually ends well. And a perfect example from my personal life, right? Way back in the day, like early tandem days, right? There would be times where my number would be a little high in the evening and I would be frustrated and I'd be like, 175. And I would have insulin on board from dinner and I'd be like, it's going to do its thing, but I'm not liking how it's not moving. So I would take a little teeny amount, right? And that little teeny amount adds up. It ends up being, about a unit. Well, lo and behold, I'm about to go to bed and my blood sugar is 107 and I have 1 unit on board. And I'm like, where did that 1 unit come from? It was the unit that I took because I was frustrated. So a lot of times waiting 90 minutes at a minimum, if not closer to 2 hours when 90% of the insulin's gone, is going to work wonders for you. The Eversense 365, what are your thoughts? So if you're not familiar with that, there's, 2 main CGMs out there, and then there's the Eversense. So you've probably heard of Dexcom. You've probably heard of Libre. Then there's the Eversense. The Eversense is implantable. So it goes into your arm, they make a little teeny incision and they put it in there. It's very small. And then you have this little, I don't know, little plastic piece on top of it that basically reads it, right? And so from what I've heard, I know a couple people that have been on it, and it's apparently very accurate, which I would hope so, right? It's literally inside of your body. Like I would hope it is accurate. Now on the flip side, the other caveat is it's 365 days. You don't have to really change it. You have that thing that goes on top. It's, adhesive. You take it off, you put it on. That's not a big deal. It's not any needle. There's nothing going into you. It's just that little spot with the incision. And way back, it used to be, every 3 months you had to go in. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. Now that it's once a year, I think the concept's amazing. They're integrating with the twist pump that just came out. I think it's phenomenal in terms of what the possibilities are, the excitement around it, the potential for it. I just think that it has to become marketed better so more people know it exists. And I think there has to be more data saying, hey, this is more accurate. It needs to be shown this is more accurate. But I think from what I've heard, the returns are great. The biggest reason I could see people not gravitating to it would be simply that it doesn't integrate with the, most common pumps, right? It doesn't integrate with the Tandem. It doesn't integrate with the Omnipod yet. If it did, I think that would change the game for them. But because it doesn't, people want the algorithms, whether they serve them or not. And that's going to be a potential sticking point for a lot of people. So keep that part in mind. I think the device itself, from what I've seen, is amazing. I was supposed to be actually one of the first people in the country on it back in 2018. And then the whole thing kind of fell through. It had to be in Orlando and everything else, and it was far away. And then they just straight up canceled the day, and it just never happened. But the people I know who have been on it have been very happy with it. How do you adjust for time zones? So I'm assuming this means, for basals, you're going from one place to another. You're flying across the ocean. You're flying backwards to Australia, right? Whatever, backwards is relative, right? You're flying across the international date line, which I have never actually done. Sounds amazing. Very excited one day to do it, but I have not yet done it yet. That being said, what does it look like from a blood sugar standpoint? And it can be tricky, right? Let's say you're flying even West Coast to East Coast or back, right? East Coast to West Coast. That's a 3-hour difference. You're landing, and that could be a huge sticking point, right? Because let's say you're on a pump. The easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is just when you land, change the time. Go land, cool. I changed my pump clock from 5 p.m. to 2 p.m. because I went to the West Coast, for example. Straightforward. You have your settings moving forward. As your body acclimates, you should be okay. Let's say you're going the other direction. Let's say you're going across the pond, right? You're starting in New York and it's 5 p.m. and you get over to London, and it's, at that time it was 10 when you left. And now it's another, let's say 5 hours of a flight. So now it could be 3 in the morning. No. Yeah. 3 in the morning, something like that. And so in that case, I would do the same thing. I would set your timer or your clock to the new location, because you're going to acclimate to that location eventually. It's going to take a few days, but you're going to acclimate eventually, and your body's going to have to get used to it. The trickier part comes into play with you're on injections, right? You're like, well, what do I do? I'm changing time zones. This is funky. I'm not really sure what to do. That's where it can be tough. And so the good news is for something like Tresiba, right? Tresiba has a longer lifespan than some of the others, right? Versus like Atlantis. And so the good news with Tresiba is you don't have to be perfect with overlapping. Now, if you want to get close to the 24-hour mark, amazing. But if you were, I slept in, I was at the 26 hours, you'll be fine. The issue is if you start going way later. And so the other thing with Tresiba is you could theoretically go slightly early because of how Tresiba is released. And again, I'm just speaking to Tresiba as an example here, but it's not one where if you stack it, it's necessarily going to be as big of an issue as it could be, because it kind of just drips it out slow regardless. But in a case like that, let's say you go from New York to London again, right? So it's a 5-hour time difference. Let's say you take your insulin at 7 a.m. You live in New York, right? So 7 a.m. New York time, that's noon London time. So your option there would be, okay, am I going to wait until noon London time to take it so it's my same time as at home? Or am I going to take it? Now, let's just say you're there and it is 7 a.m. and you have the possibility of taking it there. You could keep your normal routine and just take it at 7 a.m., knowing that there's a potential that first day that it's going to be a little bit dicey in terms of possibly dropping a little bit. Again, the further out you go, let's say you go to, I don't know, Greece, I think is 6 hours or 7. Greece is 7 hours. So in that case, right, let's say you leave from New York at 1 p.m. Let's say it's a 12-hour flight. So that's, 1 a.m., but then you're there and it's plus 7 hours, really 8 a.m. Well, then what do? You could take it when you land. You're going to overlap. Or you could say, hey, I'm going to try to convert the time. I personally think it's easier to just try to stay about the time you usually do, knowing there's going to be a little bit of overlap. But again, your care team has to discuss this with you. It's a very nuanced topic. And then going, international the other direction, that's going to be a situation where you're really going to have to consider things closely, because if you don't, you could run into some issues, because an 18-hour time difference, let's say, you're going to have to be careful, because you also don't want to take insulin just for the sake of doing it. And you're like, oh, cool. Well, it's 18 hours. I just basically took 2 doses in 6 hours. That could be a problem. So you're going to have to make sure you talk to your care team about that. What is considered a lot of low blood sugars? So with this case, it would be, if you look at your Dexcom report or your Libre report, what is considered a high percentage of lows? Our goal for our patients is always, can we get you under 5%, 4%, 3%, 2%, 1%, or 0, right? 5% is starting to get a little bit like, this is a decent amount. And then once you really start adding the very low factor in there, we don't want any very lows. We want that to be as little as possible, ideally less than 1% or nothing. But if you told me, hey, it's, 3% low and 3% very low, it's that's a good amount of lows. Like, you don't want those from a short-term or long-term health perspective. So ideally we want to mitigate that. But if you're under 5%, you're doing pretty solid. Also keep in mind what your settings are on your Clarity, because some people have their settings at 80 for a low. Well, if you're sitting at 76, I don't count that as a low. So the Dexcom will tell you you're low, but you're not actually low. So keep that part in mind. Sometimes people have closer parameters. So you look at a number and you're like, wow, why am I only 67% in range? Well, because your settings are 70 to 150, and you probably spend a little bit of time between 150 and 180, right? So it's all relative there. So make sure that those parts don't fool you either. But for the lows, if you can get under 5%, you're doing pretty darn awesome, especially if they're not like nasty out of nowhere lows. And of course, if you have compression lows, those don't count into the equation at all. So those are the questions that I got. I hope those helped. I hope you got some sort of takeaway from those, but let me know what that big takeaway is. Shoot me a message over on social at manofzeel, MANOFTZEEL, on Instagram or on TikTok. And like I said before, if you don't have a care team that truly cares, that is going in the trenches for you, doing everything in their power to make sure that you are doing amazing, then my team and I are here to help. We're all dietitians. We all have exercise backgrounds. We all get the diabetes side of things big time. And we're here. We've got your back. And we would love to see you thrive. So with that, reach out. Let me know how we can support you. And if you're loving the pod, would love if you gave us a 5-star on Apple, Spotify, wherever you are listening. I appreciate you, and I will catch you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.